Hello. I would like to take the time before this episode begins to explain something to you. You will hear a progression of when we didn't really pick up anything about the artifacts in question to when we really did. I wish to point this out. In this beginning of this episode, you'll just see us talking about the obelisk that was spinning on the turntable. What we were picking up or what we were not picking up about this, and then will see Isaac channeling at the end. You will also see snippets from two other shows, The World of Sasquatch and the GIC episode about the future kind. I will insert those. You will see those. But you also see another snippet as we were beginning to sense some more things about this. So in the beginning, don't just shut it off. In the beginning, go through the whole thing. I will also post the pertinent links in the descriptor below here, or have already, from what you'll see, of the episodes in question. One of them is behind our paywall. That was the GIC, but that is really a magnificent episode regarding future kind and the connection to a lot of these things, and the Orion Codex and all of these other subjects that are coming up. And we're eventually going to do a show on GIC that is about the Orion Codex. But with that said, just listen to through all of the material and you make up your own mind at that point. So thank you and enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lifting. This episode is being recorded on 1/10/25. So before I get into any of these nitty-gritty details for this impromptu episode, I'm going to have Joanna do the law of one and open this circle properly.
We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, and let them bring you to your highest good. We pray for ourselves, our friends, our family, our loved ones, to also let healing energies in to love us and nourish us and bring us to our highest good. We ask for benevolence now with no conflicting agenda to please come in and join us. We ask for the guides that normally participate in these conversations and any other one who wishes to participate in this conversation as well, that is in benevolence with no conflicting agenda. We ask for malevolent and mischievous beings to be swept away so that this conversation can be had. And in sorts, this is a fact-finding conversation for us. And so again, we wish to have it in peace and with benevolence with no conflicting agendas. So with that and with great blessings that we always send your way, we say, so be it.
And so be it. Now, it took me a minute to actually get my head straight around what was being shown on this particular post. And I am actually going to screen share this now because there's really only one way that I can actually show this to you all. And it would be this statue right here. And I will put this up at full screen. And this is one that Sean Bond and his people actually dug up in Mexico. Now, I've been asked the question, what do I get from this? And I showed this to Joanna.
And he didn't say anything. He just asked
anything?
me what I felt of this.
What I felt of it.
I looked at it and I looked at it and I looked at it some more and kind of was surprised about how I was feeling, and I just kept looking at it. And then I was finally brave enough to say how I felt. And I told Chris, I feel absolutely nothing from this object. And which is surprise. I'm surprised. And Chris immediately said, that's exactly what you feel, that there is no feeling. again, I don't know what this is made of, and
And a lot of these ancient artifacts in these temples in Mexico and Egypt seem to have kind of a similar look, like they're a movie prop, but they're not. And also based on the history that I know of these aliens here, this is either an Orion or an Eben. And so this has this Egyptian look and feel to it. And they have found Egyptian artifacts in North America, Grand Canyon, all of that. You know, we knew somebody that found a cave in the Grand Canyon that had artifacts just like this. So of that, I have no doubt. But I'm going off my intuition only.
well, and it's a really weird feeling
Yeah.
because, even when you look at a stone or look at something, you have some feeling, something about that. To have nothing, like no feeling, like that could be a very heavy object, but somehow it feels hollow. So I, again, had to stare at it for a very, very, very long time before I was willing to say anything because I was so surprised with myself to have absolutely feeling nothing and even a hollowness from it. So Chris and I said, you know what, I think we need to explore this a little further. And we're actually exploring this and going to ask folks to come in and chat about it with us.
Now, I know there is a concept, even still in play by those agencies like Montauk and the rest, that actually can plant artifacts in different periods of time. And they know somebody here will do carbon dating, radiological carbon dating, and they won't know how to do temporal dating. That traces it to the timeline and the time frame by which something was created. And this has happened already. We have spoken about this before in galactic history quite a bit, where some things and some belief systems were created in history based on the original temporal war. Think of I'll go back to full screen here. Think of the whole Star Trek lore where things in the timeline were slightly altered as things go on, like the Enterprise bridge changing and all that controversy surrounding that. I'm not going into that. But the story itself, how things were ever so slightly altered. The birth date and the conception of the Khan character that changed from the 90s to the 2024, 2025 period. This is the same kind of concept that I'm talking about. This is where Roddenberry got this from, and his people got this from, based on an actual concept where these factions that have time travel capabilities, also time core as well, go in and they make these alterations, also timeline alterations as well, where you're jumping a timeline where something is slightly different, and two timelines brush up against each other and trade material. Sometimes you'll get something that is legitimate, that has no basis in this particular reality, meaning that came from another timeline. In Doctor Who, they called that a neverwhere. If it's a deleted timeline and you have shades of gray, no pun intended, that comes from another timeline. They showed that in a scene where the universe was being deleted in Doctor Who, and Matt Smith's version was saying it to the character of Roy and Amy, and they were asking why all of these characters look like Pompeii, basically. He said, these are shadows of a neverwhere. A neverwhere, then I love the term that was coined from that. A neverwhere is a timeline that was basically deleted, so therefore nothing truly existed from that. I think that's I'm completely open to a neverwhere, but this, if I get no feeling, and also this can be posed as well. There is a narrative going on right now to get people to decode and encode the gray form. What better way of trying to promote that particular ET form above all else by flooding the market? And it already has happened with the Roswell thing. We already said that was the Martian Germans that crashed there, and not Evans. They were trying to attempt to get off the planet to get to Moon, Mars, and Ceres, especially the Moon and Mars. And that's where that came from. So this, I don't doubt, is part of that overall scheme. Now, I don't get all of my information from, if anybody's saying this, I don't get all my information from other beings. No, we're basing this solely off of what we ourselves feel. And intuition is the crown king of discernment. So with that said, I will close this window so I'm not taxing the computer. And so I will see who's actually around to talk about this. Mm, Isaac, I would assume it's you, because you have been the loudest in the past 15 minutes or so.
In all honesty, this is quite disconcerting.
It's very,
You know what I mean? All I can say is that this is upsetting to me to actually feel nothing off an object
and
like
we've
this.
always said if it's nothing that you're feeling, it's usually bad. Because, I mean, yes, you feel heavy feelings for things that are bad. Lighter things are things that are good. Those are the general cookie cutter feelings. Then you have this nothing like void. If you get that, that's a red flag. That's an instant red flag. And if I'm not getting anything, I'm looking at it going, I'm not getting anything. Red flag. So, Isaac, you're one of the few here we actually trust. So, let's have at it here. Isaac, you can scoot your way in. Benevolent Isaac, true benevolent Isaac with no conflicting agendas at this moment in time. Isaac? Okay. Yes, this is of great concern to myself as well. You guys are not wrong in your assertions of this based on the history you know. And is this artifact planting still going on to this day? Yes, it is. And it is extremely prolific. You have to be very careful about what is put out there, what is said, what is done. But I don't mean in a cancel culture sort of way, and I don't mean fear either. Logic and what you usually say to himself in private, can this be proven? Normally, one channeling is not necessarily proven, and I know the irony in the statement that I just gave. So, this incident, there is no fault on anyone that dug this up. And yes, there was another one that you saw quite a while back, actually, in the past couple of years. Or no, I shouldn't say quite a while back. That was a small alien tablet. This is of the same caliber. You're also dealing with agencies that can create these things and then temporally send them. They can recreate in the exact methods using a series of lasers and a series of computer timed symmetry. You've seen this with ancient aliens in the past that have done this, and ancient groups in the past that have done this, creating the stones for Stonehenge, creating the Sphinx symmetric faces, all these things. Perfect alignment. This was done in the same identical way and taught by the very same beings that did it. Excuse. This is what I'm getting at. These things can be sent through time. They can be sent to different parts of time. Now, do they do this all the time? No. Do they carefully calculate? And this is time court, what I'm talking about. They can carefully calculate this to where it ends up in a particular part of the timelines. Just like they did with Montauk for whoever sat in the chair, they calculated it out to where then an agent could go ahead and calculate out and marker either people or time frames by which something would have changed, but then they wish it to stay a particular way. They can't do this forever, but they know how to calculate this. And Time Core can fuse timelines together too. Again, the bleed through. I am not saying that the congratulations would not be in order uh, for those that dug this up, Sean and his people, and yes, and their people. But from whence did this come from, and who put this in place? This is what needs to be asked. The hollowness of this you are picking up, you are 100% correct. There is a narrative in play, but this does not mean those that dug it up did so. This means those that planted it did so. This is a scam, yes, but not by those that you know. This is, however, a Time Core inspired event. Along with these other ET artifacts, even the one that they found in Antarctica that time, where they found the long-headed skull grays, even though, if you were to date these things, yes, that one I will say is legit, but they didn't show the totality of what was there. Some of these things are legit, but you don't see the totality of what is being seen elsewhere. They are focusing only on that gray look. They're focusing only on that because that is the flavor of the day. You would call it what? The poop du jour? They are the poop du jour of the moment. They are the fad. They are the in thing for the in crowd. This is why their face is to be avoided. Because, no offense to any good versions or variants that are out there, and I know that is a slur to some from other timelines. I know Marvel used this. But in order to explain this to people, I must use this in its proper context. When you're dealing with timelines. This, and also when these government projects can create something, even if they don't have access to the timelines, they do have the ability to create a very good lookalike. Their people are quite skilled in this area. I do work around them. But there is still the temporal dating. There is still the carbon dating. If you were to send an object back through time and in a concurrent timeline, and that would build up the appropriate amount of carbon, would that not show a favorable result on the carbon-13 dating? Yes, it would. Temporal dating never lies. This is based on the amalgam of the temporal radiation and radioactivity that is involved in time travel itself, and the bending of time-space by which then that object originates, the frequency it originates from, by which the frequency then it ends up as. This was explained in Star Trek 110% in your Discovery, where the Giorgio character goes through her temporal psychosis. And they explained that there was another temporal agent that died of this psychosis in Discovery. It is because they explained it 100% frequencies. You, in the time frame you are in the timeline you are in a particular frequency. And as you pass through the timelines, you adapt slowly in the timelines as your frequency adapts, or you would get the temporal bend. The temporal bends is what you saw, that temporal aphasia, not psychosis, but aphasia. That is a form of the bends, but for time travel. And the fact that character was from a parallel universe, it put more of it was a double whammy. This, apparently when you have a frequency like that, you saw them lose consciousness both in the Star Trek 4 movie when they whipped the Klingon vessel around the sun, to go back to the 20th century, and also up to the 32nd century, 32nd century. They lose consciousness, even though people thought they were just honoring the old series. This does happen, very much like G-forces will render someone unconscious. This is temporal G-forces and frequency G-forces. You send someone way off the temporal marker. They may be all right for a time or permanently, but there may be some that go insane. They had a transporter psychosis that was the same for molecules. It's a frequency thing there, too. Yeah, your Barclay character thinking that he had this. Star Trek is a good source for the information because this disclosure that I'm talking about with the artifact is also in Star Trek quite a bit. If the frequency of that person can't get back to that time frame, one of two things happens. They adapt and replant that frequency into the new timeline, and that's when you're jumping timelines. That happens. Or you die of temporal aphasia and psychosis. It's a very slow and painful death, and it has been witnessed by myself a few times. Objects, on the other hand, don't go through an aphasia or a temporal psychosis because they're not alive. You can plant an object anywhere, at any time, any place on the timelines in the multiverse. Does that whole incursion thing happen? On very rare occasions. But But like in Star Trek again, when Kirk passed to the antimatter universe in the one where he went to the two Lazaruses, or the alternative factor is the name of it, which was also Mandela affected from the Lazarus effect. By the way, the original title was Lazarus effect based on the Mandela effect, the merging and or bumping of two timelines, and they shed pieces of each other, as he said. Now, that's how Nelson Mandela died once, and he also came back to life. Timelines. In this, Kirk was able to be conditioned to go to the other timeline. This is how some other planets are, because the energies are vastly different, and also other worlds within the introverse, like Lonulus, for instance. A portal would condition you that way. Therefore, going to the multiverse, it would be very unlikely there would be an incursion unless there was such a mass difference between encoding and decoding and physics. A person would be decoding and encoding here, and then they try to bring that set of physics there. Their brain would fry from a psychosis or a aphasia, and then the universe would aphasia out, or like in the alternative factor, when a matter and antimatter universe merge. That would be bad. This hardly ever happens, by the way. Virtually never. So they were showing you how fragile it is, and Crum would agree with me on that. But with objects, you can plant those damn things anywhere. This basically goes under the miracles episode you did many years ago, whereas he was talking about the crying statues and the bleeding statues, like bleeding from the eyes and the ears, and it was a piece of technology that some alien was in a different like frequency state messing with it. Yes, or the Bible that secreted oil, which he claimed it was the chalice being pulled on somewhere, and it was a quantum entanglement that he saw in his SSP time, that some operatives were trained to be either miracle workers, which were fake stigmata and everything, or there would be people that would be operating, sometimes without their knowledge, or there was an ET nearby doing this to keep the op up, that it was actually a piece of technology. Are you dealing with this object? Yes and no. There are unseen factors with this that fall under the fake miracles category that he recently synchronistically dug back up and reposted on Rumble recently. The secrets are in that episode as well. But does it have a different temporal marker on it? And does it have the alterations from a project on it as well? All of the above. So that this answer, or the answer to your question, required that the totality of that explanation.
So I think we're just going to now say North America, because that it will include Mexico and include every place, that we've certainly seen legitimate archaeology and legitimate evidence that folks that were over in Egypt did come over here. So I don't think, that's really not being disputed, that there is legitimate evidence
Absolutely.
that shows that this actually went down.
Mm-hmm.
I find, what's interesting when we talk about, again, a story, coup du jour, the story that's trying to come out right now, it upsets me a little bit, because I absolutely do not want the introduction of an alien race looking like a gray, being our long lost relatives, friends that are, I don't want to see that, storyline, playing out.
Why do you think that there are commercials out now with, like, your Mountain Dew commercial with all the aliens being different shapes, sizes, and colors, being your bros drinking Mountain Dew? Other benevolent groups are trying to put a halt to this. So that's what I wanted to bring out. There are other groups trying to encode and decode their forms besides them. And to combat that agenda, they feel that those beings have violated a treaty, and now they have free to do this. Like what Hitler did with the reptilians and the Orions, the Mosen felt then they were in violation of the treaty, and they could help America and Great Britain during the Second World War. This is the same kind of dynamic. You're up against more of a anti-propaganda versus propaganda type war.
Right. And they were so explicit about having him carry that little purse. I just, obviously showing a position of power, of information, of whatever, people think are really within that tablet.
The satchel of knowledge.
That satchel of knowledge, which is basically was just, these are your instructions for the day. This is what you are particularly doing. But, so the whole thing is actually, upsetting to me, and upsetting, honestly, that it has now been introduced. I'm still perplexed because if it really was of such great value, no one has come to take it from anyone. And that blows my mind as well, because normally an artifact of such importance wouldn't be able to be hidden, especially if you made it public. If you put out a picture of it on the internet, you would think, that somebody would be right at somebody's doorsteps to get it.
That is the clue, is it not? And that's not always the case. Some things are just meant to be out there. Other things are meant to be out there, but there is a price tag and or condition behind it. Just like he was wondering why your pieces were never completely confiscated, which they should not be, because they fell beneath the line of, not necessarily, I shouldn't say acceptance, but it was under the radar. Think of the frog boiling in the pot analogies. Quickly, it jumps out. Slowly, it acclimates. Your pieces are not part of that whole dynamic because they're something that's supposed to be out there and it's protected. This, on the other hand, has a half and half vibe going on. Granted, you put the warnings before the spells on your objects. Some people don't read it, but that's on them. This, there was no warning before the spells either. No instruction book. And the writing that's on it basically says how can I put this? I'm not trying to be unkind, but a cookie cutter history? Hashtag cookie cutter history? To be associated with galactic history. Things you've heard before and things that are true, but it's only that little corner or portion. Think about somebody who sent something back through time, and in the yield, think of this for a moment. They would have to still say some things that are true. Just like in your Stargate program, there was an ancient in that actually used a time travel device. This is a beautiful example to save a planet from a Goa'uld Lord. The Wayne Brady episode, I believe it was, where he took a time machine, went back, and you eventually see the character later on that he was more of an explorer that wanted people to succeed and grow. He took some of the old ancient language, he went back through time, he went through this one planet's entire history and left a Rosetta Stone of the entire planet's history up to the time the SG team finds the tablet. And then it showed things ahead of time a little bit too, being the other end of the temporal spectrum. And it was essentially like a Rosetta Stone, but for time travel or for the history of that planet. I'm talking about this artifact is something like that, but it is also associated with propaganda because of the gray image. I know you guys wish to be blunt. I would suggest caution with this episode, at least for a minute. This is good that you have done this to mark this. This is good because he saw this earlier, wished to comment, and he froze when he looked at this because of the same nothing feeling. He waited a moment, that's why he asked you, and he kept circling back around to it. This is something that you will be retouching on in the not too distant future. This also, to anyone that sees this in that not too distant future, just know that this war is going on and this propaganda war is going on. The artifacts will be under your carbon dating and radiological testing would seem legit. And so they are, according to the tests you have available to you. But so also in the projects, they can make it so. And so in the traveling through the different timelines and the temporal manipulation and frequency can make it so. No pun towards Star Trek, but you get what I'm saying.
So do you feel like there are others that would look at it like Chris and I and be like perplexed because they didn't feel anything from it. Or, I mean,
There is
I
a-
just want to know is this something really that's going to go out there and people are going to swallow up as some sort of evidence and be
There-
gung ho about? Or
Yes and no. On both ends of the spectrum, you are correct on both ends. Whereas some people go gung ho and others have felt nothing from it, but will be swept up in the hype or swept up in the awesomeness of it, and not they won't completely go with the feeling because they will go with the crowd. And I'm not talking about anybody you know. I'm talking about later on in time. This is true of any of these artifacts. You saw something similar with something called the Roswell Rock in the past, where you saw it being analyzed by your Ancient Aliens group, and it was of a crop circle. That one was legit because it mimicked the crop circle, and it was talking about the multiverse. And it had that really glistening, stone, kind of like vitrified surface. And you see something similar with this. But this is the difference between the two. That stone was created, and that crop circle was created by a group in your distant future or futures. This is the same one that did the Rendlesham Forest incident with the hieroglyphs. And some of them are actually making some of the crop circles. So, with that said, there are also rivals that would also want to undermine that type of communication. Self-exploration of humanity, like the ones and zeros they sent back to about High Brazil in that incident. So this is who you're up against. You have those perpetrating a fraud, which would be the Time Corps. Then you have those that actually want to actually show you from where these things come from. This is where you need to understand the difference.
I still can't quite wrap my hand around the why, though. Why perpetrate this fraud? I mean, I know there's somewhat of an agenda, but I don't understand the perspective of a Time Corps person or whomever's doing all of this as to why not allow the truth to unfold. Why, I can certainly understand if it was, Nazis, you know what I mean? I get it.
Oh yes, they are part of this. I have not.
Right, but I mean, I guess I would have thought Time Corps maybe had a little bit different standard.
I want to say, let me amend what I said. They are being used as the agency go-between to make that possible. Yes, it is some of your Martian Germans that are doing a lot of this, but it's Time Corps that's actually, because via the technology, some of which the Martian Germans have used, and some of the ETs have used, are making some of that possible, and also Montauk and all them. It makes it possible. Who do you think is monitoring all of this traffic? It's Time Corps. They like to play God, or they watch closely those that believe they are God. They can look at any of these time frames. Very much like, again, this goes to your temporal agency in Star Trek and Discovery and the Temporal Wars. It's the same thing. Or the TVA in Loki. It's the same thing. They're allowing it to be planted. It doesn't mean that they themselves put it there. They are to blame for letting it happen, because they are they are calculating to see if they should allow it or not. In my opinion, this makes them still guilty.
Well, I don't know. For me, I can't find in my mind a justifiable scenario to think that, allowing such a large fraudulent, direction of history, you know what I mean, would in any way, shape, or form be good for humanity's or humanity's growth. So it makes me not want to think kindly of them, because I don't know how this is good for humanity. I certainly know how it is good for certain factions
Yes.
who want to remain in control, but I don't understand how they can stand by and allow something that would put the greater good of humanity on the back burner to allow some of these other factions, positive step forward for themselves while
Yeah.
humanity is left, again, looking at falsehoods and looking at manipulations. I don't get it. I'm calling them out on it because I'm like, I don't even understand what you're thinking. You really are tinkering with things that really do you have a right to. And why would you do this? Why would you allow such a fraud?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand, and I don't understand them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are difficult to understand. Think of your biggest egghead of sitting in a laboratory somewhere, working on with some petri dish or some project or something, some such thing. Think of also the say the military that guards these projects. Think then of the same kind of scenario also in your movie Tenet as well, where they had the inverted time, where they were sending messages back in time. Who do you think they were referencing? Hundreds of thousands of years in your future. They showed him in Switzerland, I believe it was. Uh, and because that's a cabal center, they reference that. Think of the guys that are calculating this, the AI that's helping them calculate. Like also you see in Loki where they had to have a AI calculate like a chess computer that missed minutes type thing. They have something like that. And they also curb people in the multiverse that might not be going along with how they feel their timeline should play out, hence the sacred timeline mentality. That's where the gardeners come in as well, shaping it how they saw fit. And the same thing with the Sverdlovs. So, that said, you have the guards that back this up. You have the wardens of the system that back this up. And you also, that's where some of the men in black come in to block not only the alien, but to also block what some of these people feel time isn't and what time is. And they've also convinced people that time doesn't exist. You've heard this yammering on in your New Age circles. Just because things are parallel does not mean it's not existent. Because there is temporal energy, there is time energy, and it's a non-existent they're saying, oh, time is a non-existent concept. It's always the moment, but that moment is consistent. It consists of a multitude of timelines, all coexisting, everything everywhere at once. It doesn't mean that doesn't exist. That is one of the biggest scams of all time, no pun intended. That they say in your New Age communities that time is a fallacy. Wrong. Time is quite real. And so are the temporal scams, and so are the aliens that also perpetrate this. Even if a simple alien perpetrated this, people wouldn't be able to tell the difference here because the technologies are so vastly different from one another. That will change, and these scams will stop. And again, I must reiterate, this is not a dumping on or the slamming of anyone that found this. This is basically what you guys were picking up on. This is essentially this is why you guys don't seem to always get excited about these new finds like that other one they found. And also years ago when you guys were in Salem, you were watching videos on the other first one they found in Antarctica. You guys weren't too over enthused, and also the stuff about the giants buried and everything, because there are giants buried, I should say, and in Antarctica especially. But there was so much hype towards the gray face, you guys knew that's what they were doing. This still holds. Even from when you guys were watching those things then, this still holds. Now, where the poop du jour comes in is not just the gray face, but the story that the Ebens are weaving, the story that the Nazis are weaving. And you're dealing with those that think they are the master race, but the only thing they've mastered in is coloring outside the lines, or more like scribbling outside the lines. They can't exactly color in a coloring book very well, I must say, because they sit back and laugh. It's just like in your movie Gattaca, where it was said, your Ethan Hawke character said to your Jude Law character, or he said to Ethan Hawke character, when Ethan Hawke's character was impersonating him, even carrying some of the genetics, because the other character wanted to get on board a spaceship, which only all eugenics altered people could and were allowed to. Normies could not. But they said they are so arrogant then so full of themselves they would not believe that a regular human made it on board one of their spacecrafts or spaceships. This is one of those times. Those fools are so arrogant that even with people speaking, us right now saying this, no real retribution is going to happen at all from it. They will continue a plan up until where they cannot, their last breath, as you've heard. They don't think people down here are smart enough to see these things, especially with the dumbing or the psionic dampening they put in place years ago. They think everybody's dumb. And yes, there are some stupid people. Even if you shut the thing off, they would be would be going, hoo, hoo, hoo. You know, they would be that way. Not discounting that, but this talk about poop du jour. The biggest poop du jour of all of them are those that think they are the master race, when in fact they are a jack of all trades, or jacks of all trades, and masters of none. This is the truth of it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your commentary. So before we shut this down, any last words?
Yes, I would be cautious with this for the moment. Remember what we have said, offset. Offset this. Then, once this is offset from the time, think of temporal and frequency coding from an event. Yes, you want to report on current events. Wonderful. Great. Go for it, as long as it's within a certain, I don't want to say tastefulness, but a certain, I don't want to say boundary either, but based upon the current event of, say, UFO, or a current event of an artifact, or a current event of this. But sometimes, you must offset by a distance. Just saying. Then once you learn more about some of the other areas of this, then you have this time stamped, and you can then present it. Show that you have done your due diligence, and show that you've done looking into other areas of this, because more will build on this. And you can include as time goes on, no pun intended. This is all I can say on this for now, but it is good that you have marked this. I would wait on publications, again, to offset the time from the discovery to the later period. It doesn't have to be long. Just give it a minute, and you will see more on this. So this is all I have to say on this for this evening. So thank you. Yes, we have noticed this before. We've got no blowback by offsetting things. People always hated it when we do this, and we will report on some things. You will see this in the not too distant future, from the time of this recording, from 1/10/25. But at the same time, there's some things we have to offset because of the fact that there might be some crucial sensitivity in place. Because also in some areas, loose lips sink ships. So sometimes certain things won't happen if you say them publicly. But if one or more say it even privately, they might change a dynamic. But once that's made public, you have millions of people, even hundreds of thousands of millions of people perpetuating a certain energy. So by the time you see this, I will make this public, of course, because you won't be seeing it otherwise. But it is going to be offset from the original time frame of which then we talked about it. So, Joanna, I don't know if you have anything else to add here.
Nope, not at all.
Okay, so thank you everybody for watching this, and more than likely other things will be attached to this. If not, then this will be it. So thank you all for watching our material, subscribing to our sites, and thank you everybody. And I now close this circle within true benevolence, with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So thank you everybody. Bye bye now.
Hi everyone. It's unusual that we actually go back in and add a clippet of information to a program, but we're going to do that here today. The conversation that we just had about the artifact that was found, what you saw was actually something, again, that was quite raw for us. And we have great emotions towards certain beings, as you guys all know it. It's a very interesting thing because we had been told for years that archaeological type findings would be found. And again, some of them would be quite genuine to the time. Some of them, of course, as you know, there are people that always make things and put them out there and they're completely fake. And then you have that whole other category, which this is seeming to fall under, which
You have oops objects as well, yeah.
yeah, which is actually, kind of something that is placed in a period of time, which is what all this was basically alluding to. Not by something that was in any way, shape, or form negative, but something that was quite and is quite benevolence, cheering for humanity. Sometimes these things, again, as Isaac was alluding to, is there
planted by Time Corps and also the Martian Germans to convolute things as well and have the temporal signatures from here, but placed in an area in the past by which then they would age and then pass the carbon dating test.
And then in the benevolent side of it, you also have those that would maybe place something because, again, facts that should be known, facts that actually should be out there and known and not hidden. And I think this is maybe one of those particular categories where, again, even in crop circles, and as Isaac was alluding to, the same group can be, responsible in a benevolent way to say, warnings of beware of those Greeks bearing gifts kind of things, and warnings. And as well as, again, bringing into the discussions that need to be had about things that obviously that we've been talking about for years, but now some sort of physical object that can be looked at to say, what is this about beings that actually do exist and beings that have had a background role, not just abductions, because again, some of those small beings, theirs are more robotic for hire, things like that, but actually other types of beings that have behind the scenes had a big hand in a more nefarious way. And so this all has to do, and again, I'm much calmer now than I think I was then because I'm always upset when I see quite negative things being brought to light that, again, may be potentially used as trying to convince people of a positive history that did not exist. And again, being wary of what you're looking at and being able to discern it. And sometimes it's benevolence trying to give you basically a warning.
Yeah, there was, and I'll mention the bulk of this portion in Galactic Intraversal Consortium. It's about the future kind. If you look back, and I will bullet point this for you fairly quickly, the Rendlesham Forest incident with the military team that found the UFO with the hieroglyphs on it. That's the future kind that hinted at the lost island of High Brazil. That whole case, you can look that up, and the crop circle that had the gray in it, that had the warning of beware of Greeks bearing gifts. There is good out there. That is what the group we are referring to, but then also referring to Time Corps and the Martian Germans playing the nefarious side, where also the Time Corps will calculate down to the decimal point, even putting it back to a certain year and having it age to the exact appropriate marker. They do nothing but calculate. You have the Martian Germans that just want to manipulate and show how great they are in history. So you have a lot of these.
There's a lot of things that are a part of a part of all of this. So that does not detract whatsoever from those people who are finding these objects and are bringing them into the light for discussion, which they need to be. And what we have found since then, just a few days later, what we have found is there is a lot of interest to have discussion over this. So you'll see us mention it again in many other shows now with other beings that want to come in and start to have these discussions.
The Sasquatch being one of them on the World of Sasquatch. All appropriate links will be in the descriptor to see the totality of this. I even warned Brian and the rest of them in the Disclosure Now group that this was a more complex subject and it couldn't be answered in one fell swoop.
Right. And so again, but apparently its time is now. I think the interesting thing about this benevolent group that we're going to be talking a little bit more with and letting them talk about themselves and their challenges throughout history. I think the interesting thing, about it is the timing of when they made themselves known to you. So, often for us, communications may begin or a hello may begin or whatever. And something is getting ready to happen where they will want to carry a discussion. And so your first, I believe, contact with them, where they made themselves a little bit known to you, was, I believe, in November of 2024. And again, here we are now in January 2025. And, they would like now to talk about their contributions to this particular timeline that we are on, and how these things come about. So again, we hope, again, Chris really wanted to do the lifting show as we just did it. More, it really was a raw form. We had just seen it. We had personal feelings about it, things that confused us greatly. And of course, being very wary of whom we were seeing.
And then we also had to get further downloads on the subject as well as look historically into things, both the logical and the intuitive side.
Right. And so again, the questions being, I mean, who did this and why? And so we'll have further discussions again leading up to that. We know for a fact that there's been plenty of evidence out there that's been dug up and hidden, not allowed for the public to see for one reason or another, maybe related. There could be a lot of things related, to gray faces being drawn and people, again, being taken and hidden. Now some of these things are coming out because they are absolutely a part of our history. We've talked about that from day one. And, we congratulate those and the hard work that was done to bring this into light, to have this conversation. They are good people doing good work. We just want to congratulate them on being able to accomplish this. We always send them, the best of, energies and their highest good for whatever they do in the future, and are really happy that this now is coming up for a really enhanced discussion. So we'll put it at the end. It's rare that we do this, but so much information was coming through in these last few days that we wanted to give a little bit more perspective, and wanted to let you know that this is just going to be the first of many discussions.
So thank you for this, everybody. So this is where I call this, and you'll be seeing a couple more clips from the World of Sasquatch and Galactic Interversal Consortium after this. So thank you.
Do you want to close it here, and we'll close it with this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we want to close the circle?
Yes, I now close this circle within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas at this moment in time. So thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now. Yes, it is I, Mirnak. I call Arizona my home, as you know, along with Sufas, my grandfather, and Seymour, and Morak, and Uma as my brothers. There are a few more that don't wish to be talked about, but that's fine. This conversation is interesting because this extends the conversation about that particular object, but this also extends the conversation. I will let the future kind do more so, but there are those two rivals, the future kind and the time core, and of course Martian Germans and all the ones you aforementioned. Isaac gave light to the time core and the future kind and the Martian German involvement. But I will go a slightly different route. Yes, do objects get buried for others to find, like time capsules? Yes, of course. Messages for the future. Also warnings such as your Olmec heads. They were placed in the ground to diffuse their energy, very much like how your orgone pieces, some have to be outside and on the ground and some have to be buried because of the immense power. It's not that that was dark, and it's not like the Olmec heads were dark. It's just they were powerful. It's also akin to that story you heard on Ancient Aliens with the guy that blew himself up under the rock kind of thing. He lived under the rock. It's because the energy got to him. It was too intense. And also places like the Sedona, these places were meant as temples, not necessarily places to live. But I'm off topic. The artifact in question, yes, was buried a long time ago. And does it promote the whole gray agenda? Yes, you bet. along with those other parties that were yielded in. But is this also a warning from future kind, like that crop circle? Yes. Now, this could be considered that. This is why this was allowed. It then narrows the timeline, and Time Corps can say that they calculated it down when in fact they were allowed to do so in this instance. And the Martian Germans just think they're so damn great, the fact that they're involved at all. But we don't need to go into them. This, and there is not only congratulatory mood in play for those that found this, but this is not being taken away from. But this is bigger than you think. The reason you had a nulled feeling is because it was sensory overload as to what and whom was involved. Our people are involved in these types of things as well. Our people have not only been in danger of timeline rearranging and temporal rearranging, but some have tried to go back in time to even uncreate our origin story. But at the same time, we also have assisted in burying certain things, even burying not only histories per se, like we hide ourselves, but it's like the Tartarian world unity, where they just kept on existing and just went and hid in their summit. This is also a very important topic as well. They can go into their influence into this some other time. Just like you have your Orions and the Council of Kendafor, you have the yins and yangs in all aspects of existence. People think it's about pure neutrality, but even Creator, the one you call God, is basically light, shadow, and neutral. It is all neutral until you call on the true benevolent source creator and the Orions summon the dark creator. I will let the Candidafor Council go into that when they do so on your GIC, and I will let the future kind go into their origin stories on GIC. But I will now go into question.
So, I would say sensory overload was really probably a better description of what happened when we looked at that. I agree with that because I was in such shock, first of all, and upset. As anyone who saw the other show could.
It's a download in one massive punch an uppercut to the face. Yes.
Right. And then there are energies, there's absolutely something coming off of it. I think an energy, some sort of energy coming off of it. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a cool, great energy. I wouldn't necessarily call it a healing energy.
No.
So what is your perspective on what in the world is coming off of that?
This is a mix of things. You are detecting multiple temporal signatures because think of it this way. Say if somebody does surgery on yourself, or say if somebody walks on a piece of land, or say if someone enters a room, or many people enter a house, or even in a hospital or a shopping mall where there's multiple people involved in all different aspects. You don't know where they are in their evolution. You don't know what attachments they have on them, etc. Think of an object that had multiple not only calculations and intentions behind it, but think of groups of people that wanted to adhere to their agendas. Think of also like saying your Marvel Cinematic Universe where Thor and Odin put the spells on Mjolnir. One for Thor basically getting out of his arrogance, the other one for Thor healing Jane in Thor Love and Thunder. You notice how the words become spells? Intentions become spells as well. And in this, Future Kind allowed this to be so people would see I don't want to say fraudulent, but see the warning. Even though they put that other crop circle. They did that themselves, by the way. You see those shining orbs that are making the circles, that is them in a lot of cases, but some aren't. You have the false ones, and then you have other groups doing it too. But then you have Time Corps calculating, and then you have the multiple timelines that this thing has passed through. Some objects were built temporally to withstand timelines. Think of a goofier scenario in your Back to the Future movie. What happened when Marty lays his girlfriend on the swing? Then he goes back and alters the timeline. She's still in the same spot. What happened in your Ash versus Evil Dead when he alters his own timeline? He is still a certainty. What happens in your Deadpool and Wolverine when Wolverine is replaced onto to that particular timeline as an anchor beam, unmovable, immovable object emits an unstoppable force. This, as it was created, they knew that no matter how many timelines shifts that took place, no matter how many timelines gently touched and passed objects back and forth, they calculated that an object had to remain, or your Jack Harkness from your Doctor Who, where the TARDIS considered him a fact and panicked because everything is supposed to be fluctuating, not necessarily always factual, except in their individual universes, you see. Everything's a fact in their own universes. Even the physics are different within the aspects of the multiverse. You cannot have an object always that's an anomaly. Just like the Doctor calls Jack Harkness an anomaly, or time would say you're a fact, an unmovable object. This is why you are getting all of these different there's this weird signature from it that is an overload. Yes, there's dark on it, there's light on it. A lot of surgeons had their hands on it. A lot of people had their hands in the till, including our own, were around this. This was put back ages ago, but it has also become part and was part of that agenda to promote the grays encoded and decoded into people's minds. Again, also another reason we self-promote is to do the same, but for good sides. The same that it will do for the Council of Canada, the same will do for they will do for the future kind is being done for the Greys and all variations of that particular race set and set of subsets. This is no different. You were getting this feeling, just like when you stacked all those stickers together in one area and stacked a thick phone booth sized stack of them, and you felt sick. It's because the power was compacted. You were feeling a compacting of timeline. Oops objects are this way, where they drop from timeline to timeline. You were feeling a compacting of timelines for something that was created not to be altered by time alterations because they wanted a message through, and even the yield was in place because the future kind wanted it, the Martian Germans wanted it, Time Corps wanted it. See the power of 3 that was added in there? So you're seeing that triad. They're not working together. They're rivals of each other, but you still are feeling that, if this makes sense.
Well, it does, meaning that each particular person involved in it, again, had their own kind of agenda, their own hope for humanity to interpret this as, their own, you know what I mean, perspective on this. So I am curious about, from your perspective, and since you're saying that the Sasquatch people also had a hand in this, what was the goal for you guys for now, for it to be found, for its interpretation? What was your hope?
Because if one thing, regardless whose other intent was on it, if one thing was seen as factual, just like that other alien artifact that was found in Mexico a couple of years back, even with all that in place, Isaac has his own perspective, we have ours. Even if one thing's in place, then what do people question about what else is real? What, like, say, our feet in the mud, say, our people being sighted in the woods. What else is real to them? If the dark aliens are real, then what about on the side of the light? As you people would quaintly put it, there's more to it than dark and light, but you understand what I'm saying. What else is real? What else can be decoded and encoded? What else can be looked at as truth? This is the only reason, and literally the only reason, that this was allowed. So you can say we are involved to that kind of extent.
And so in general, is your understanding that these objects are, is there any truth to the fact that these objects are not usually found until there's a particular energetics that allow their finding?
Yes, you are correct, Joanna. The frequency has to be as of such so for them to actually be seen. Some people argue, oh, they weren't found because they were just planted. Some things are that way. Yes. They're planted there so people find them, but some are put back via time travel into antiquity. But as you cross timelines, as you get into a certain perception and perspective, And he says grounding your avatar in the I am presence along with the better part of your oversoul and better part of your avatar in the I am presence. Once you start to approach, then you start to ground more in your I am presence. You begin to see all these anomalies. The people more than likely passed over that spot a million times where that artifact it was found. Would they have seen it? No, because they were not in the right timeline. Even though I said it anchors in a bunch of them, there's still a fluctuating frequency by which you wouldn't be able to access unless you had passed into that frequency. That is true of some things, not true of all things. Sometimes you see things of multiple frequencies and you don't know that. Sometimes you see ghosts pass you on the street. You think they're regular humans. They think they're regular humans. Just like you on your Are You Afraid of the Dark years ago, where a ghost thought he was still human. He didn't know he had died and was asking somebody for help, and he was getting phone calls from a dead girlfriend. It is because that frequency anchored him to a particular moment, and that was based on a true story, by the way. They died in a train car crash. This was back in the 50s, early 50s, actually, 52, 53, somewhere in there. But with this, it's the same. Also, if you have never seen an object before, this goes into coding and decoding, encoding and decoding. If you've never seen something before, how does your brain have context for the energies, like with the overload, this goes with it, and with all the hands in the till? How can your brain conceive of something like this? Again, they could have passed by it a million times. It still would have been there. They could have stubbed their toe on it and would have just seen it as a rock or a tree stump. Something they are familiar with, like your Native Americans when they saw the Europeans come over. They could have swore the ships that came over were clouds. But when they encoded and decoded it further, they saw that it was made of wood and canvas. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I'm assuming obviously there are more than just a few things that have been placed benevolently
Yes,
for people to find.
the hundreds of them actually, and some that have passed from different timelines or the other and have remained in those spots in even a couple, multiple timelines as well.
And so, I guess because, again, as it was mentioned in the previous show, I think right now, some of the things that are on people's minds are, could Egyptians have come to North America? And I think obviously this is another object that's going to be able to say somehow there were Egyptians in North Carolina. We have heard that there were quite a few things found in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Of the Templar and Egyptians in the Grand Canyon. Yeah.
Right, that really aren't out there for public to know about yet. But
there's a Mayan city or Lemurian city in the Grand Canyon as well.
right. So I would imagine if we're getting to that time frame of revealing that knowledge, that there's going to be discoveries made in different places as well that make it out into the public for discussion rather than just hidden away.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you will begin to see this more and more and more. Things that are related to narratives, things that are related to not only us, Time Core, and also Future Kind. Will start to mark things with their usual crop circle stamping. They haven't done it completely as late because there's been too much interference. They picked and chose a time where the energy again was more aligning, which you were slightly more freer energetically when you went to Florida. Therefore, the communications were slightly better. They made it look, though, as if it was not a pre-planned conversation, but I must say that they are sticklers about the wheel of time coming around to a particular frequency point at a particular time, therefore communication possible. So these things were planned. Even your Rendlesham Forest incident was planned by the book and by the clock, you see. So as Isaac was saying of them saying that time doesn't exist, anybody that says that time doesn't exist, they are obeying a psyops. Before we get into comments or questions or anything of that nature, we will say that no, we are not necessarily a they in the traditional sense.
Taking a while to say that.
Yes, we have.
Excellent to hear.
We have been waiting hundreds of years to use that, and it is appropriate to your commentary. So we will identify ourselves currently. We are explorers of ourselves. The eyes of your eyes comment is translated in the ones and zeros. It is you looking at you. It is even other versions of yourselves that have incarnated into this time, very much like your Dinok timeline, where a woman he knew incarnated where they could complete an energetic cycle in that respect. You could translate our name to the eyes of your eyes. And also, Hi Brazil. We were pinpointing, yes, an origin of where some of our operatives looked across the centuries, mirrored each other within the centuries. We used the number codings of both the 7 and 9s and the 1s and 0s. We have a safer version of technology that also works in binary, duotronic, and your positronic would be identified in your Star Trek program. Anti-gravitic, all of these particular things rolled into a temporal clock by which the rotations of celestial bodies is our guide, like it would be for astrology and astronomy, but the timelines by which we navigate are the oceans, and the spaceships that you think are spaceships are our sailing ship. The High Brazil island had people on the island that were not interested in mixing with others. They were slightly vain when we discovered them. They were more your fairy tall white types. They were depicted in your Farscape program as the Tendiron race, or the Tuatha De Danann. Not all variations or variants of those, and we do not mean variant as slur. We mean it as variation of genomic structure alignment. The differences in years are a stepping stone. The group of which you are speaking to now, we are from the year 8100. The year he stepstoned to, where we also have some of our explorers within to guide the direction of the timelines to a positive and not a cataclysmic end like the Nibiru timeline that he saw that was in the Interstellar movie. Both sides were being depicted in your yield. We have representatives, just like the negative has representatives within your own century. We also have to combat that of time core, by which sits outside the timelines. They were depicted in your Tenet movie hundreds of thousands of years in the future. I wouldn't be that, they're not that savvy, let's say. They are outside of time, very much like your TVA and Loki is. It's the same difference. They get a god complex every now and again, but that is irrelevant at this juncture. They have implanted artifacts in history to try to, again, create the timeline by which the others came from. Those bearing gifts, the ones we warned about. We created some of these crop circles in order to create staples in time by which our exploration showed time to be, meaning our observation of the most possible timelines, best possible timelines available to that of humanity, and not the toilet timeline of which the Orions actually came from. The vortex of crap that they came from. The dark creator nonsense. This, we say, across the centuries, we are literally the eyes of your eyes, seeing you as you. We are you. You are us. We depict ourselves within history. We are not who you think we are. We are not the Anunnaki. We are not that of Elvenkind or Tuatha, though we've interacted with them. We are not that of any of the groups that you have seen, except for those few instances. Some more have been made public with crop circles. We are responsible for most of these, the legitimate one. We are also helping with humanity's nuclear concerns, which was also depicted in your time tracks, where The bad guy was sending nuclear material to the alternate 2194, 2193, 2194 time frame. It was actually a disclosure showing what some of your government people are trying to do with the nuclear waste, trying to send it somewhere else. They like to portal crap somewhere else, but where does that somewhere else end up? That was like your Family Guy, where they visited a universe where people could just evaporate the poop out of their body. Then they visited a frozen universe, go, oh, there's the poop from the other universe. That was Pernian. Because basically your government depicted essentially in time tracks with the character of Shambe sending the nuclear material into the future timeline. This is essentially what your government has attempted to do, and we have not retaliated. We have known that we have needed to interfere. Lanulos does this as well from time to time. We have interacted with them. They were also depicted on that same show as the two young naked people that show up with the chirping noises. That's tall white territory, or at least the good versions of therein, the Procardian race that was mentioned in that show. This also like mentioned in Marvel, the multiple timelines, the Tree of Life. We are on a concurrent collision course with yourselves, regardless of the temporal frequency value you find yourselves in. We are guiding, we are attempting to, manicure is not the right word, that's what Time Core would use, or the Gardner family, or Sverdlov family would use. This is more of an observational, historical expedition, very much like in your Star Trek, where you had the temporal cops essentially trying to keep the timeline intact. It's not as fragile as you think. It branches off, but also can be altered on the linear and the parallel. Depending on the devices you use, you can actually alter on the linear and then create a bunch of branch timelines. It's actually both. Your Montauk attempted these things. Just know your Sound of Silence timeline will not take place if we can help from this. It is essentially like Star Trek, where the historians would go back and look at different things that happened. We have done this. We are a sailing ship on the sea of time. We entered into this, your reality, at multiple points in history. We are that of your own reflection. Because of this, we want to see where we began, and we want you to see where you end up. The moment is always now, but time still exists in a flow, not necessarily of a cause to effect. It can go to effect to cause as well, like a causality loop, like you see your Voyager's Janeway talking about, hating temporal mechanics. Think of temporal mechanics. Think also you're Back to the Future, where Marty ended up in the same spot over and over again. This is exactly what he did with this house in one of our areas. This was a go-between that was more energetically compatible with himself. Think as time goes on, would you not change your perspectives and perceptions on particular subjects and particular things? Would you not change as a species? Wouldn't that look alien to you if you encountered, say, if a young version of you, and like say at the age of 20, encountered a version of you, say at the age of 50? Wouldn't that look alien to you, even in that small amount of time? This is where we come from. We appear as ETs or aliens to you, but we are explorers, very much like in your lower decks, where you had a federation that was multiversal in nature. They were exploring different universes, but only when they could explore different universes. You see, it was a different version of the federation that was multiversal. We do the same, but for time. We do the same, but we do not want our enemies and our invaders to get a foothold, with which they could have easily done had there not been interventions warranted and other alliances formed within the multiverse. So we can change the flow of this conversation if you like.
Well, I would like you to just describe, because again, what Chris saw in his dream, I think were people in regular houses, so just describe a little bit, and again, you look just like us,
Mm-hmm.
and then describe a little bit about your society.
Mm-hmm. Yes, in that year, thinking of aspects of time and aspects of space-time are no different than if you are breathing, walking, eating, talking. Telepathy is a thing as well. That woman that he encountered in 2194 was one of our own. She was put there as not necessarily a sleeper agent, but she was told and trained to look for key words, key phrases. He has also seen aspects of this in different timelines where he visited what he thought was he was seeing a version of 2023, which was another disaster timeline of which you saw the military takeovers. He also saw 2033 at the time, whereas he thought China was messing around as well. These were alternate timelines within the sea of the multiverse. They did happen somewhere. He saw a nuclear war taking place as well with nuclear tanks and fusion technology. Where we live, we have none of these things. Our society looks exactly like yours, and it's exactly the same. Think Star Trek level technology. That's also in 2194. You're seeing normal people. In 8100, think the same. You go and do your thing. Yeah, jobs are a choice in our time. Money, do we trade with other races and other areas? Yes. Do we still have a form of currency? None that you would recognize. Just know, yes, you are paid for goods and services, but the economy, if you looked at the version you have now to the version we have, you would swear that we went moneyless, like in Star Trek. You would swear this happened again. The difference in between, if you're not experiencing all in between leading up to this and the stages in between, you would think we were a foreign planet, that we were alien. But say if you walked into a bar. Yes, Isaac, we know a man walks into a bar. Yeah. But in this instance, there are no dirty limericks to go with this, much to your chagrin. You go into a bar. You pay for a drink. But what do you pay with? Well, this is both a physical and a digital type of situation. You literally would put a bill on at the bar to basically say if they had a bill that looks like a piece of paper, but it's a hologram. This is the way I can describe this in a method, and we would describe this in a method that you would understand. You put this on top of the other one, they fuse and crumple and disappear, and that is the bill paid. This pays in a form of currency that is a physical and digital hybridization of both the idea of the physical money and the idea of the digital money. It's based solely on an intention and an idea of an exchange of energies. With this, you are literally paying the person the price they have because you are exchanging that one idea for another idea. Say you have something bigger and not just going to a bar. Say you're buying a car. I want to tell you something. You don't buy cars in our time. They are just there. It's just like in your Aquaman movie where Amber Heard's character steals the boat and Arthur says, this belonged to some guy, right? Oh, you just don't have them available. That's the difference. We have them available. Nobody really owns a vehicle anymore. They're just there. Nobody really owns power. It's there. Nobody really owns communication. It's there. No one really owns food. But if you grow the food or if you use the resource, that is a service paid for. But are there homeless? Is there crime? There are crimes, but it is usually from, I hate to say this, from outsiders that not only come from other timelines, but There are also others of ours that have visited other time frames and have gotten accustomed to another way of being. You can be accustomed to any way of being. We are not above turning. We are not above remaining as we are. We're not above any of these things. We are human like yourself. We have just learned different and better things to make the world a place of peace, a place of honor. All these things, like your medical, all this is all free. This is where he's getting these ideas from. We have been transmitting these things across the rivers of time in little trickle downloads that go back years for yourselves. We leave clues. We leave breadcrumbs. We allow the energies to expand. Then we allow them to expand more. Even mistakes to be made as to the nature of our opponents, the nature of our enemies, and the nature of our friends. We, in our world, you would look at a city, say if you went to New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles, you would see both humbleness and technology. The timeline he saw in 2194 was only a few years away of what he saw with his friend, whereas California was agrarian and Washington, D.C. was a museum. And Virginia Beach, he encountered some people in that time that told him about some things that were happening in yours, variations of essentially people becoming independent from your cabal and the cabal retaliating and there being a few conflicts. I cannot dispute, and we cannot dispute these claims. I'm sorry if we speak in I's and we's. This is how the quantum field works. But this was a time frame only 140 some years from your own. We are in the year 8100. We send these crumbs back, these exploration crafts. We did not crash in Rendlesham Forest. It was a conduit on the other end of the River of Time. You have a conduit and a conduit. You could exist on the same spot, and it still goes to the other, disappearing from one frequency value. Like the TARDIS, essentially it's not traveling, it's just disappearing here and reappearing here. The only reason that it looked like it was crashing was from the perspective of the men, Pendleton and the others. They had not seen anything like this before, so they both decoded this in their own way. The closest one to decode it, right, was the one that we saw was compatible to download the ones and zeros to. You have to be compatible or a match. Very much like if you made a clone of yourself and you can put a consciousness within. He saw this in your Cyberpunk 2077, where a German scientist was essentially saying, we cannot transfer you into somebody's body unless there's a compatibility like father, son, mother, daughter. But that was a bit of propaganda. You can also do it on frequency harmonics and adapt a clone's body or another body to also do this, like the Deans mentioned in your Voyager, when they were wanting to transfer a lung into Neelix from Keth. They're like, oh, your medical knowledge is limited because humans said there would be rejection. No, you just readapt. Even though those people were evil in the series and they were making fun of the Velodian medics you currently have, they were giving them a finger. I will let them, or we will let them speak to that respect in some point in the future. Some people in Hollywood just don't like them because they want to cure diseases and basically rid people of adrenochrome addiction and all of that nonsense and evilness. Now, in our time frame, we are past those that him and his friends saw. We're past 2193 and 2194. We have also reestablished cities in your California. And yes, it is still there. There is no big one. We have yet to see a timeline by which the Orions and Dark Elves initiate this, except there have been a few disaster timelines that have been not necessarily pruned, like you see in Loki. They were just allowed to die of natural causes, like you see in your Deadpool and Wolverine. There are natural cause deaths of those, the same as you witnessed. And it's very rare, actually. So it's not, I guess, natural, it's just incredibly rare. And it takes a lot of time. Yes, we know, Isaac. That's, yeah, the jokes, yes. But in this, if you went to New York City, you wouldn't recognize it. You would recognize the Empire State Building. You would recognize some of the other buildings. You would not see slums. You would not see You wouldn't even see rats. You would not see dirtiness of any kind. You would not see that which you see now. It is regarded as an historical landmark. So is Washington, D.C. But the seat of government may surprise you. In the other time frame, the seat of government went back to Pennsylvania. Later on in history, we learned that we don't necessarily need a seat of government. That in that other time frame, your government evolves into a you would call it the all thing, and this was more North America together. In the time frame we come from, that form of government and voting isn't needed anymore because no one tries to one up each other. We have evolved differently, but we are exploring our past tendencies, our past shadow. Not necessarily to say our kin in this time frame are a shadow. No, we're exploring and doing that shadow work of how we came to be, how we evolved to be the eyes of your eyes, how we evolved to explore the rivers of time. Hopefully, this answered your question.
Well, it doesn't, but I have to bring up one thing that was shown in the crop circle. Because although you're explorers and you're looking back and exploring yourself, you put your hands in it. You do put your hands in it, and especially in the area it seems of you do not like deception, and that how deception will try to dominate and control the situation.
Yes.
So you definitely interfere in a sense to, it seems to bring that to light so that people can see it.
Lying is abhorrent to us. There is no point with a species that is telepathically inclined with each other. You lie, and that sends ripples and waves across the entirety of the one. So there is no point in the lies. Now we notice that there are forms of good deception to keep evil at bay, like loose lips sink ships. This is prevalent in your time. Granted, we have had something again similarly as well in ours from outsiders, but with the deception, like within the crop circle and the anchoring of history, the temporal rearranging, as you and the forest people refer to it as, we see this not necessarily generally as abhorrent, even though it is a form of a lie, because we have tried to steer that vessel. We're not just explorers. We explore as we evolve, but at the same time, we saw it was necessary to keep that intact, more of an enforcement or law enforcement. We do have law enforcement and temporal enforcement. And we saw that Time Corps was attempting to fuse timelines and in your Mandela effect and have artifacts jump from timelines to timelines. Yes, in certain frequencies they are invisible and some they are visible. That doesn't mean that for people. Objects, you could stumble over the same rock 1,000 times and not know it was an artifact that was there in your midst. There are structures and other frequencies and dimensions you walk through all the time that you do not know are there. Now to the warning. The image of the gray. I know this is stereotypical. It is because, multiple variances of interference. The crop circle, the gray, as we said, stereotypical. We know because you've seen it so much, and this was by design, as he said, encoding and decoding even the erroneous shysters of history were dark mirror, your dark mirror. We were showing what the Orion Greys actually appear as. Basically the Greeks bearing gifts, as you would say. We are saying there is good out there. This is a crucial juncture of the timelines interchain. They lost theirs, as I've said, the shrinking thereof. This would be your equivalent to True Benevolent Spirit or True Benevolent Source Creator clipping the timeline. And this is exactly what happened. But There were those that escaped that, very much how we travel the rivers of time, as do they. But they busted through the multiverse in a massive exodus. Not all of them survived, and their servants. But what occurred was that of conquest? The conquistadors of time and space, those that had genetic uh, prowess, those that could alter the fabric of a genome with mere intention. The year that they came from, was somewhere akin to a little, how can I actually, how can we actually translate this? Did not come from essentially our time frame. It was very similar. It was slightly before. And they also knew to be able to go ahead hundreds of thousands of years and back. So it is difficult to judge. But their point of origin was a parallel timeline that was actually similarly inured to our own. It is actually partially unknown to us as to the temporal frequency value because that particular timeline has been deleted. So we can only surmise based upon the actions and intentions of the enemy. But we know it was a timeline that faded. Now, the reason we warn of this deception. There is other deception where your government uses these forms. You have your Zeta Ebans and other gray type races like your Murther and other races that were created as servants, but then broke free. The Ebans are the ones that act most similarly to the original Orion Greys. You are dealing with variations of human. You are dealing with variations within the multiversal construct. You're dealing with, like you saw in your Quantumania, where the He Who Remains or Kang had all these variants where some of them looked like alien. This is where also the Nictic come into play. They did not intend to lie in this way of their point of origin. Beta Centauri is indeed a point of origin of which they entered the time. They enter and exit the timelines, very much like your Orion Greys entered through Orion. So it really was not a lie. Lanulos exists in your Worlds Within Worlds, but also has an aperture exit within the Ganymede star cluster. Now, it's the physics are difficult for let's just say your regular Joe to quantify or codify, but I will attempt to bring this home or codify this. We will attempt to do this. I'm sorry for the double speak. It's a we and an I situation. The human brain in this time frame self-identifies as one. And we do also do the same. But when we communicate as this quantum speak, it turns into a we. And it doesn't mean we're more or less evolved. It doesn't mean that we're turning into a they, as we've said. But it means that we are culminating the quantum language in one burst, therefore as a collective, but not like the Borg in Star Trek, if this makes sense. So some people would be concerned at this. We wanted to tell the difference. The other was more of a manipulation as to nondescript gender, which is that of they, them, the spell, which is that of some of your Iban agenda and Orions and satanic groupings putting this in place, and your cults of Baphomet and all of these. And intersex would be the alien experimentation. But some things mutated and went wrong, and those people have their own independence away from that of Baphomet cult and the cult of Syrian, Circe, and all of these. Now, well, I will describe this so we do not cause offense. Also there are people that are connected to the theys and the we's of the multiverse, and of their parallel and past selves and future selves. This would cause also a dysphoria as how he is communicating with us. The brain at this point in your evolution cannot, and the energy cannot codify and quantify or qualitate the being of many. Even though you're existing as a multidimensional being, you are an I am presence, always, as he says. This is what is being abused on the other end, if this explanation makes sense to you. Now, how we abhor deception. We do not like the tactics of Time Core because they are attempting to rewrite history in, not necessarily in their own image, but there are certain quantitative narratives that behoove them in their stance of law enforcement, you would say, that they guard the timelines like the gatekeeper, the who goes there. I define quantitative temporal version and temporal, like was depicted intended, and with law enforcement as that of someone who believes they are the only stance in this area. No, 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 no. The others were allowed in to anchor a timeline of pity and that of acceptance for that. We're not talking about some of the long head skull ones. Those were created by the Orions, as well as some of the Tuatha, tall whites, as well. Also, other variations of things were created by Odin and the Odin sons as well. They would be more fitting of the term Anunnaki, by the way, even though that means those from who the heavens came, blanket term, they fit more of that functionality, and the Orions use their massive psionic capabilities to manipulate even they and them. Yes, that was a joke, guys. I know you're around. So it is more of yeah. They see humor in that. So this I hope answers.
But it brings the question: in 8100, are you jumping timelines, and therefore some of the timelines that you want to have for your future? Is that the reason why you're coming back? And I will just say trimming or affecting or seed planting in other timelines, like our timeline in the past.
Yes, seed planting, yes, to end up as we are. Yes, you are correct. But there's also another aspect to this. Think of the Isle of High Brazil for a moment, an island that you could see but not get to, but not interact, but not stay. This is essentially our own doing. They say that was the origin, but this was an conduit point by which we were able to enter into, and the tall white elves that were there were less than pleased that we were interacting with them. Slightly vain, if we do say so. But this is how some of their species is. Again, depicted as Tenduron in your Farscape. Now, think of also your Skyrim lore with the Isle of Artaeum, for instance, in that, where humans became advanced and were able to actually exit an entire island from that of reality. They even told the other Daedric lords, hey, you cannot manifest here and conquest the locals. Who do you think they were depicted with the Sigic Order? Us. We helped forge some of these laws. Yes, he thought it was the Galactic Federation that was being depicted. Yes, they were involved in this, but it was also us. Odin has also done the same with carving out a dimension for Asgard. Outside of this, within your interverse, think of this, but for time. Think of this like what the Time Core has done. They have carved out a spot on the edge of the omniverse from the multiverse. We are time, but we are also watching over it. We're also sitting outside of it, but we also experience that flow from moment to moment, like a normal culture. But we are affected by the other timelines. We feel them. We feel when the how can we put this? The odds are not forever in your favor. We know what to expect, and we say this because we've also looked back on the Roman period. We've explored this. We do not want our timeline erased or snipped or cleansed in any way, shape, or form. We had to form a way of protection from these things, not necessarily technologically. This was more intentional, but it was also magic and technology as well. It's not like the technology can shut off and undo this. The same thing with Time Core. It is essentially we sit on the map of the edge of multiverse and omniverse. We see the stars, we see the same star patterns, we see everything you see. But we also see what you see what we see. But we also exist everything everywhere all at once, just like all the rest of the timelines. But we are essentially an immovable object amidst an unstoppable force. I hope that we hope this answers.
Yeah, I think so. So you are humanity as our future,
Mm.
and you're on Earth, or as we call Midgard, and that is the middle that Odin has very much talked about as the reason why it's called Midgard. Has anything changed with the structure in the future with all of that?
No, we are still Midgard. You are Midgard. But this is going to be slightly more difficult with the temporal mechanics to understand. Yes, Earth is the middle. Yes, Asgard, Midgard, and you have the introverse, multiverse, omniverse, super omniverse. But imagine a spot within Midgard that could guard the middle, while also viewing and existing within the outer rim. That would be the edges of the multiverse, looking and gazing at the omniverse and super omniverse. Omniverse and super omniverse is where spirit would essentially lie, and the oversouls would essentially lie. So, can we hear them on occasion? Can we look out at the black, as what was said in your Firefly, and see nothing? No, we see an array of lights, array of strings, an array of timelines. Remember your Loki show where they could see the sacred timeline glowing? We see things like this, but we also see the normal skies of where Earth sits because we are Midgard. So we still guard the middle, but we are existing at the same moments. You all are, but at the same time, no pun intended, we are literally on the sea, basically on the sea at the edge of forever. We are like the city on the edge of forever was also about time with Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. We were also in the cafe on the edge of forever, like a friend of yours has also spoken about. So we are literally sitting in those dimensional spaces, but we are also still Midgard. This was the way that we could properly guard the middle point and that we could properly enforce that of not disappearing into the long good night. Is this
It does, but then what is your relationship with that Goodwill Foundation?
Hmm?
I call them Goodwill, the Galactic Federation. They
Yes.
call them the Goodwill Foundation, but
Yes. Though they do not accept charities, they're an interesting lot. They've been around for 140 million plus years. You would think by this time they would learn to adapt policy better, but they are stringent. They're like your academia that was depicted in Voyager when the dinosaurs were evolved in the Delta Quadrant, and they find out they're actually from Earth, from the last ice age. That was as they were depicting how academia acts towards you here. That was a political statement that was being made by that Trek episode. We are essentially watching them the same way. They are a mix of races, inclusive, and yes, some of the sects of them or councils have come up with your DEI nonsense. We have watched this, and we have dealt with them a number of times, no pun intended. We have dealt with their leadership, and we also try to push them in a particular direction. Some of them, their leadership are stubborn. If you were in their council chambers, if you were literally in the Galactic Senate, you would see exactly like you see on Star Trek and Star Wars. Several aliens sitting around, some are shouting at each other. Imagine in a big room like that where people are yelling at one another, you'd go deaf, especially with some of the booming voices some of these ETs have. Now, with that, their policies are very slow to change. But this is where we have also gotten a representation there as well. Just like we put a representative in the 2194 and 2193 timelines, we have done the same there to try to sway them, to try to open things up a little better. We see the potentiality of that organization, and it can be a wonderful thing. It can be a great thing, but they must adapt with the times. That was only a partial joke there. They must upgrade with the time. They do not believe that they need to upgrade in certain areas. Now, will humanity show them this? Whereas they can be slightly more creative? Yes, but and we do wish to say, is humanity the cure for the rest of creation? You are a voice in a very massive choir. You are a voice in the multiverse. You are a voice in the universe. You are a voice in under the stars. Everything is possible under the sun. Now, your sun sits in variations within the multiverse as well and communicates. You communicate with Helios. Think of something like that of where we are and where you are, Midgard. Think of these things. Think of the choir of voices that surround you. It is the mentality of those that are deceptive, that want you to think that you are somehow the cure to a disease that exists in creation. No, you are explorers on the great sea ocean of time, just like your reflection, the eyes of your eye. This does not mean you are a cure. This just means that you have different ideas on how to proceed on things and can aid people in creative pursuits and aid other cultures in understanding your own. And then you understand theirs and you become more educated. Again, changing your perception and perspective. Will you eventually change the Galactic Federation? Yes, if your intent is to change some of the fascist policies. Yes, absolutely. And we condone this quite prolifically. This, we hope, answers.
Yeah. So I appreciate it because again, when you try to have a perspective of how old they are, even the fact that you're in 8100, 7,000 years, from, plus from us, that's nothing compared to really how old they are.
This is why we are attempting to slowly change their mind. We know it took a long time for the Orion deception to infiltrate. Could we easily go back and find the original point of insertion? Yes, but this would not behoove anything. We would do more damage than good if we did this to stop the original contract from being signed. Yeah, this was our first thought. We'll just go back there and exit the Orion factions in there. It's like your white golden cord it is in your Skyrim, where you had the Elven person sitting at the table of the negotiations of both Civil War factions. She wanted to make sure that the contracts weren't being violated. And you also have in your Star Trek Discovery, as he's mentioned, where Vance and Osira are hammering out an alliance with the Federation. This was essentially Orions and Federation coming to some kind of consensus, but that was again more wishful thinking on how it was supposed to go. Impartiality. A member of the she would have to have somebody that was not her on the Federation Council. This is how this was supposed to go. They decided to go dark light neutral, which is not actually. We want to point this out. It's not actually a thing in that way. It's how you act towards other people that determines this energy that you are bringing about. Yes, there is in your Star Wars like the dark side of the Force, light side of the Force, and there's neutral. That's how Creator is built. But it doesn't mean that in a matter of legality that you mimic those tendencies so closely. It is the Orions that saw this way, and they inserted that gobbledygook into and muddied the waters. Now you had an expansion also of the Galactic Senate that was a result of this, and now you have a version of Congress. Now, one could say it's almost like getting Congress with Satan, but this is where we're at with this. We literally could change this from within in the concurrent timelines that you are sitting in right now. There is a cluster of them, and sometimes that narrows to where you don't jump as much, and sometimes it's quite prolific, like tree with a bunch of little tiny branches. Like you see in Loki with the Yargzadril tree. It's the same, it's always the tree. But there are times where the tree doesn't feel necessary to grow something like that. You just continue on a couple of little threads. with them, they do the same. There are even timelines that they exist in where this has actually been accomplished, others that they are gone forever. Like in your Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, the Commonwealth doesn't exist 300 years later and everything's in shambles. That's how it is kind of now. But then you have like almost like the fledgling republic in your Ahsoka series, where they were just trying to get going. There's other aspects that have died and other aspects that have been reborn. We are attempting at this crucial juncture, where they could go either way in the timelines, to help fuse this. You see, Time Core isn't necessarily concerned with Galactic Federation concerns. They're concerned with Earth and trying to accelerate them into that organization. They also your cabal, men in black, whatever you want to call it. And Martian Germans want to be the head of the seat of the table, and everybody under the table, like in your John Wick. But we are attempting to get them to recognize Earth as different. So therefore, they are a tradable, trade withable, if that's a term, sovereignty that could form its own. This is a big hot button topic in the Senate at the moment. So we hope this answers.
This really does. It seems like this century is a very vulnerable timeline. And that is why, and it's because the Cabal and the GF and everything else is trying to build that large branch on the Yggdrasil tree for that desire. And so this is why you're somewhat battling the Time Core. Was there a choice that the future humans, you from 8100, decided to do this? I'm interested in when you decided to do that, and is there just
subjective and relative? Obviously, excuse the interruption, but
no.
this when is, like I said, subjective and relative. Theory of relativity, time, distance, all of that. But why we wanted to get involved? Think of a timeline that sends all these little branches off. This is how universes are born. They birth from bigger ones. They birth from larger ones. Like again, you see in Loki, the sacred timeline where it's birthing all the branches. This is how this works. This is why the He Who Remains thought there would be a war, because it was going to create all of those. But this is what happens with yours. There is a major part of the trunk and branch, which you are. We noticed other little branches that these fools were trying to make. And we noticed that this could cause a schism by which then Time Core could fuse those events back into the main. Think of this for a moment. You have this timeline. We'll just say sacred timeline because that's what they named it in Marvel. And you have branch. And what happened in the Loki show when they created He Who Remains? They gave him future knowledge of, Time Core TVA. It created the branch by which then created all these other variations of He Who Remain. This is what I'm getting, and we're getting. Think of an organization that wants to create the backstage where they are in charge. A timeline and a copy and paste by which they're the only ones that exist there. Think of a fusion back into your own timeline of when they could create these alterations, copy paste those codes, and then fuse it back with the calculations of time with Time Core. This is what's going on currently. This is why this is a crucial juncture. We felt the ramifications of this if it went the wrong direction. We felt this. And we felt that some of those other timelines would get corrupted as well. From this, it would turn into a very similar to that of the Orion conquest. So, given their intrusions, they wanted that variant back, or that variation of time back again, so they could keep going back and forth. They felt that it was unfair that the timelines did not favor such darkness. Yes, you are all in between, yin or yang. And also, it's really variances of less light, less of something. Light and shadow, yes, you need your shadow, you need light. But it is instances of dim bulb or a light bulb. They chose the dim bulb. And within that, it became a abhorrency to the tree and became a poison So when those beings escaped there, they tried to recreate the very viral timeline. Think of like Dutch elm's disease or something like that, or invasion of carpenter ants in a tree. What happens? The tree dies. If you have all the same thing from timeline to timeline, including artificial intelligence jumping from timeline to timeline, like your AI deity and all of that, what does what does that wrought in the end? Total darkness, and that of no light, then a shadow can be cast from, therefore the end of all things. This is not what you want. This would be your supposed end of days. This is where your prophets were getting the whole end of days timeline from, because they were looking at this juncture. Just know that this kind of situation will never happen, very much like with your 2012, where you heard your David Adair speaking of a timeline by which you had a solar ejection kill the last person on Earth in December 21st, 2012. This was a calculated variation that was then weeded out. Your time core actually weeded this out. And we also assisted getting rid of this. They do good from time to time. No pun intended again. But just know that there's dark and light, but then there's poison. There is like an overage of poison that is essentially a very bad viral contaminant, and sometimes a tree has to be cut down. That would be devastating if this happened. Very much again, like you saw Loki, where the timelines were dying and the tree was dying, and he had to take control of this. Granted, that is Enlil's wishful thinking of standing at the sea on the edge of forever, and on holding the timelines within his grasp and becoming the tree and the guardian thereof. It's just like how Lorcan in your Elder Scrolls timelines is the dreamer god of deception. This is where also the god of stories in Marvel came in. It's the same thing. It's more of a wishful thinking thing. You're also seeing Time Core as the TVA, as being in charge on the sea at the edge of forever sort of thing. So we hope this answers.
Well, just to clarify one thing, because if correct me if I'm not hearing you correctly, because it makes it sound like there's always, the one thing that humanity always says is everything is redeemable. Everything can be healed. Everything, and it's a wish. It really is a wish for everyone to say that. But from the way you're talking right now, it actually sounds like if you have a mindset of it that I don't ever give in, I don't ever give up or whatever, that may not be able to happen in some instances, that you have to do things to not allow the virus to completely take over, because there isn't a redeeming quality. It will never choose to be healed.
You cannot heal everything. The way you heal, the way you result in healing, is sometimes the cancer must be removed completely. Yes, evidence of it can be there, because that's always going to be, hence your artifact. But what is being activated? Yes, you are activating your best possible selves with the energy and the perspective and perception you were walking in, the frequency you're walking in right now, and understanding that you're always in the current moment, but still looking ahead to the future, like what was said in your Star Wars. Always looking ahead. But also, think about for a moment in that old creepy He-Man movie he wanted to bring up. It's also on the edge of forever. The Castle Eternia, Castle Grayskull was sitting on the edge of that, where Skeletor wanted to take over the castle, and he completely became this golden god kind of thing, or like your Sonic becoming a golden god type of thing. And then He-Man couldn't break out of it completely. This is essentially the time interchange city or city or civilization on the edge of forever, on the edge of time, space, multiverse, omniverse. And then also you noticed a real important clue, the one character in it, the cop that was in it that chose to stay on Eternia, but yet the two teenagers were returned to time and their parents were alive. How do you think this is possible to have two things at the same time? It is a calculation. It is also a multiverse, other timelines forming and variations and variants like you see in the show. No disrespect to anyone listening, but this is a way to describe it. Why I bring this up. What happened always happens to Skeletor. He's defeated every time. People see this as good triumph over evil, even though He-Man was supposed to show the master race, masters of the universe. There was a bit of propaganda in there. But like that's the Martian German with the Templar cross and the blonde hair, blue-eyed Hobbit. But think of this for a minute. What always happens to Skeletor? He's defeated every time because it is the goodness within, even though He-Man was also supposed to represent the goodness, they were also doing the pronoun thing, we must add. The He-Man, what do you think they were advertising with that? She, Ra, and also Ra, She, Ra, Shield, Rothschild, the Egyptian origins of your cabal. Talk about timeline intrusion. And this, what we're trying to say, before we get too far off track or off time, yes, the if an infection, if something dark like that would get it, there is a battle of dark and light, no question. It's the intentions and the energies that are created either from a dark, neutral, or true benevolent source creator standpoint. We cannot let the other dominate. That means good must dominate over evil, like you've heard in your storybooks. But are they of equal power sometimes, and that we have to dance on the razor's edge and dance with the devil in the pale moonlight, sort of thing? Yes. In this instance, should a map to the stars of Orion be taken seriously, historically? Absolutely. Like I said, the opening they used to enter on the apogee or apex that they used to open into this timeline and tear across time-space. Did this end up on the 3 stars of Orion? Yes. And did the pyramids get augmented with this map, reflecting that and that energy collection back and forth, and also the conduit back and forth by which one could transport back and forth? And these Grim Reaper types ended up in Egypt in different parts of history? Yes. But did they also leave their mark within ancient Sumeria, like you see, and also Egypt, like you see that pyramid with the 2 rings, the artifact? That is an interface. Think of 2 beings that could, yes, Isaac, we know it's Wonder Twin powers activated. I understand. It is exactly as he says in joke forms, like the Wonder Twins from your Super Friends. What did they have? Rings. What did those little the rings tell the device to do? It was the intention by which then the energy and the information within that artificial library could be unlocked. It is a library. It is a codex. It is the Orion Codex of which we spoke of. What could activate from the Orion Codex if it is not within the polarity by which we sit? What could be activated? What temporal energy and intentions could be activated in a device that is an amalgam of all of these things? That's what the ring device is. Luckily, no one has the DNA variations to open this and to activate it, thankfully. But, it does not make it any less important. It makes it extremely important historically. It makes it extremely important to the timelines, and to a question that was thought of: why was this not confiscated by your temporal wardens and your men in black? It is because there are other timelines contesting that confiscation, because those that would take it would want to experiment with it, and some of those people have the proper DNA variations to at least partially open it. This is never going to be allowed, because of the fact that, think of a energetic variation in template for a minute, a harmonic by which then, either in physical, viral, or energetic form, a frequency that you wish to transform into another frequency, like the travel through time, travel through space. Frequency here, frequency here. You wish to go here, you put this here and put it here. This is true for creating anything, any mutation, any variation, any DNA pattern, any you call it shape-shifting. Think also how some of these cyberviral implants are put in, thanks to Gene Roddenberry, the name, in Earth Final Conflict, how this type of thing is accomplished in reality. They can take the water in your own body and turn you into a surveillance drone, by which then an implant is formed out of the water in your own body because of harmonics. Think of the sand with the harmonics of your 111s, 222s, 404s, in hertz and megahertz will form a shape.
Yeah.
This is essentially what is going on. This is what's going on in that ring device, and it will take the shape by which the original programmer wanted it to take by the carefully selected harmonics. Your V2K technology is based on this, and the Genius technology is based on this as well, where it can be used to heal an entire civilization, or it can be used to turn civilization into one thing. Think of your master character in your Doctor Who, in the episode by which he took an alien device that did that very thing, an archway, and he turned every human being into himself. This was essentially your Martian Germans wanting to symbolize they were the master race, master of the universe again. This, and the strongest, I have the power, but you all have the power to fight this. That's where He-Man actually is a benefit. I have the power. I am in this, and just like we are a we, but we are individual I ams. And we are one. We're individual I ams. In this, that frequency tone of which they put in there, you felt it on the video. You felt this. Did this feel good to you? They acknowledge this in the video. But human curiosity killed the cat. By which, yes, ironic, Isaac, Egyptian cat, yes. Now, he has the propensity of interrupting, but anyway. He has a cone of silence over him so he doesn't hear him. We do this device. It would literally open up, swirl around a little bit, and then readapt the DNA of people to activate a particular harmonic that was then created by its architects to bring about a particular knowledge. Would this look like somebody turning into some ghoulish Grim Reaper? No. It's knowledge and information, but that knowledge and information could create an anchored timeline variation by which then Time Core would then fuse through a Mandela effect back into itself, if this makes sense. Therefore, creating a shoe-in for these beings to actually create their branch, if this actually makes sense to you.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But then some of the one thing, this actually, Bjorn, if you haven't picked it up, segued obviously into the artifact. The artifacts.
I noticed that.
Yeah, that were being dug up, and Chris and I were asked to comment on it. And so one of the things, the couple of comments that, we've been talking around this house about are, one is, thank God there was energy sensitive people around it to know, and other things as well, that they're not 100% just okay. And so, that was one of the things.
It would also, we do wish to interrupt, there was also a sequence in your Stargate Atlantis where a computer had the same ability, where it caused the character of Rodney to almost ascend in a way, altering his DNA. This would do this because people are so focused on, we bring this up because people are focused on ascension so much and becoming an energy state that they're not focused on the grounded I am. The grounded I am is what will win the day.
Right. And so, and again,
for the moment.
It's an interesting, this whole thing is an interesting conversation because you've made it clear that you're a part of this. You're a part of the fact that you want these things to come out to light. You want these discoveries to be, found. It's very interesting. I'm glad you answered the question why it's not been confiscated, because the energy is coming off of these things. When Chris and I first looked at this, what we were told then later by the Sasquatch is that our initial looking at it, that we were so overwhelmed by the energies coming off them, we felt nothing, zero, nothing, like it was fake, like it was whatever, but we knew that wasn't right. It was very disconcerting to us, and it's taken us literally days to be able to decompress what's really going on because and please, you've got conflicting energies, it appears to me, coming off some of these artifacts, and they're extremely strong and they can be conflicting. So I was so happy to hear that was picked up upon. Huge that was picked up upon. And whoa, we got step back a minute and really see what's going on about it. So one of the things being that, yes, the grays, these depictions of these beings on these findings now, they were a part of it all. No matter if humanity is ready to accept their existence or not,
Yes.
here you now have it. Here now the archaeological evidence that is going to be coming out, that you're not going to be able to deny this for much longer. Again, was this all in benevolence though? That again, no, not necessarily all in benevolence. And then as you said before, like with the crop circles, with the warning, be careful of this, because you don't want to fall into the same traps as before, which then gets into the one question of, again, the Mayan culture and what was going on hundreds of years ago. Because the one thing, and I told Chris this right before some of the thoughts and images that were coming to my mind that were a little bit disconcerting, and I didn't know whether or not to even bring this up today, but he said bring it up. Because one of the things that we do, we know that things feed through electronically, energies feed through. And so some of the big things like TVs or whatever, we cover at night. We shut down, we shut down things, we cover them. Now, what has come through to us is that the color that seems to not let a lot of this energy through is red. Okay. And so red comes through. Red doesn't allow this through, and we cover it up. So thinking about having, and some of these things that are being found are so strong in energy. And I guess it's almost like calling out, find me, whoever can activate me, find me, do whatever you can do. But is it necessarily the codex you want? It's like a Pandora's box. Do you really want to get this back? But with that siren's call, that's kind of the only way I can think about it.
Yes, so it's very much like in your Skyrim Dragonborn DLC, where there is actually a being underground of this temple called the Temple of Mirac in the Isle of Solstheim in that particular series, where he's calling to people from underground, but he can't excavate his own temple. He's in a stasis state, so other people are hypnotized through a spell to dig him out. And it ends up digging his physical body out after a while, and you end up having to get rid of him. Think of it similarly to that. All these discoveries are a wonderful thing. All these things are appropriate and are needed out in the open. What is not needed out in the open is the activation that comes from it. What is needed is for people to be aware of it, and essentially it's that whole two or more walk in my name type of concept, whereas two or more people are looking at this, not necessarily just with enthusiasm, but with an understanding that this needs to be guarded, with an understanding that you are the keepers of that gate. You are essentially now the caretakers. It can't be done willy-nilly. It has to be done in a constructive way by which then you are the caretakers. It's essentially, again, like the Sonic mentality with the Emerald in the movies, where they became the caretakers of it after a while. This is the same premise. I bring up all these pop culture things because they all are crammed into his head, in his subconscious. It is because of this. This is the way we communicate as well, through those forms of synchronicities. It's not just those buttheads from the internet that do this. That they're actually, Isaac actually did a good joke by saying they are C minus type of people. I know people are going to be hearing this before you air that, but just know that is both coming and has already happened at the same time, very much like us. So
but to get on with the red.
Because
what really bothered me was the fact of the energies that were coming off and how strong it was. Having this stuff out in the public, could it drive people crazy? And if they realized, I hate to say it, what was flowing then? What was flowing then was a lot of red blood from sacrifices.
Yes. You can shield against this. Certain devices can be put up to dampen this. And we will bring downloads into the ethers to help make this possible. Yes, the all the Mayans and all the Aztecs and other groups did that sacrifice to that of the reptilians, like your Xibalba, for instance, the underworld. Also, your Peruvian underworld too, where you had the god Merope, where he was the reptilian form and had parasites that would come off of him, and he would attach them to people's necks and whatnot. That's Draco. Like he always made the joke, yes, he ushered people to the underworld right next to the fine china and the human bones. That he always made this joke, and this is true. What happens? Also, you have your Stargate Atlantis, where you had the Wraith in there, where there was a culture that would send people to prison constantly. They were making a statement where the Stargate crew saw that they were actually being sent to a prison island to be sacrificed to the Wraith as a deal or trade deal to leave the rest of the culture alone. That's your cabal mentality. And this has gone on since that time. The enemy came in, stepped in, and went, oh, yeah, as long as you sacrifice to us, we'll protect you. We're your parents. We're your friends. We're your buddies, pals. This is essentially that. And then in the end of that episode, those Kabbalist types, the Wraith came after them. Now, do they think they believe this is going to continue to happen? It will not, but they believe it. In this instance, does the red then spook other things? Yes, he says it's an inverted. There's an inverted red, and that's a proper red. Yes, this is true of most things. The opposite end of colors that you could literally taste, you could literally feel them, you could literally hear them. Blind people can actually hear colors, like some of the ones with the echolocation abilities and energy psionic abilities if their sight's been taken. You see, the audio part of the brain can do this. The same goes for this. Again, it's frequency clashing with another frequency. But the blood red, does this spook people or say they are appeased, like what you were saying, with the blood? Yes, you are actually 100% correct in that way. Whereas you put a blood red shield up and it basically says this has already occurred here, therefore do not pass the gate. We've already done this, goodbye. Now, this is also why your satanic cults have used this particular red. Is not only a protective color, they are signaling that they have done it, but some of them have actually done it. This is a trick if you use this to protect mirrors and protect gateways, doorways, and screens. Also, red is a power color, so is black. Black is a protective color. That's why witches use it. But this also tells these entities that, we've either been here already or we can't pass through this because of the color value. It depends on the type of being you're dealing with. They all use the black box effect, which is your television screens and also the mirrors. Your Draco do this quite often, basically appearing to people in mirrors. You heard this in your Nightdale as well. Whereas you heard the screeching from the other bathroom, that was a Draco using the mirror and the dragons and the force people screwing them up and protecting you guys. Now, and he saw it from your closet and other bathroom that was in your room there. The other mirror was showing also the forest people as well, trying to intercede on that mirror's behalf. The 1,000-orb mirror that you were talking about, that was the forest people helping out there. We had some to do, but of course, the forest people were mainly there. And some of your dragon kind as well. But with this, which are different from Draco, the same root word was used, but it is not the same. So, and they wanted me to point this out. Burgess wanted me to point this out. So, I hope this answers.
Yeah, and I appreciate it because again, when we talk about the codex and the library of information, that mentality is a part of what is within that codex, right? That drove some of these other things to happen. So it really is something. And as said in the very beginning, you're the one who actually brought up the artifact here, is that there are moments where things cannot be healed. And so this really may be something
balanced, not necessarily completely healed. Through the balance and by extracting some of the negative things, the healing can begin, just like you extract cancer cells to be able to heal the body. This is exactly what is occurring. The history remains. You must keep the history at all costs. Keep the history. You must learn from this. This is why it's stupid to tear down statues like your BLM does. But because of even this undesirable or distasteful histories. This is a distasteful history. But it needs to stay out in the open. But those energies, yes, can it be in time be changed with different frequency therapy? You bet it can. Is it going to happen all at once right now? No, it will just make you think that you've done it. Because at all costs, what happens with a virus? It wants to survive no matter what. It needs a living body. It's not going to kill anybody, but it needs a living body. A virus can't have a dead one. So the Orions learned this and adapted. Very much again, your Stargate Atlantis, where there was a Wraith ship that had a computer AI virus on board, and it kept re-uploading to the Earth ship's computer. They literally had to shut down everything as it was flying in a small craft. Then that AI didn't know what to do. In this case, you shut down some of the not necessarily the attention you're giving it. That's the wrong choice of words. The desire to have that upload to you. You get rid of that, and you respect the history and the learning process by which you are learning from that history. Not try to cover it up, not try to be in awe of history, yes. Be excited and passionate all you want. Be careful, and just know you've now become stewards of this and these objects. I'm talking about those two. Become stewards. Becoming a steward, there is a responsibility to this. There is a major responsibility to know what to access and what to block. When you do this, say when you get rid of a negative entity off a property, you are then taking them off the game board, essentially transmuting that energy. And then you are clearing everything around. This is the same process, but you still, within that house, you still have the house intact. You still have all of your people and information within that house. But yet that original energy has been transmuted into something that's palatable and palpable to the people that are around that device. Essentially, just like, again, with the sonic type of reference with the green emerald and the stones, which are like the Infinity Stones, by the way. And you can reform timelines of matter just like Thanos did, always wanting to do. Or you being unburdened by what has been. That is the line you keep hearing. That's what they want to erase from before and continue on. What do you think your cabal wanted to do in that backstage timeline? Back up, integrate, and move forward. Wrong move. With this pyramidal device, yes, have it in a museum. Take the necessary precautions to. It would have to be on a blanket of red to sit upon, sitting on it like a boat, with no viable grounding. You have a red that is reflective, and it looks like you're on just a sea of red, not necessarily a sea of blood, or like in your biblical timeline, the sea of blood. That was actually rust that did that. That was part of your Egyptian mythology with Moses and the rest of them. That was actually some manipulation that was going on to get people hooked to a religion. Like with your Akhenaten, he wanted the Aten sphere worship. Caesar took that from the Library of Alexandria and took that back to the Vatican Library, hence you have Christianity. This is similar. Anyway, put it on a red velvet cloth. Set it in a place of prominence, but also in a place of caution by having the intention put on the glass that it sits behind, the intention that you are blocking anything negative and anything that wants to rewrite you away from you. You're not giving any perceived tacit permission for that, but you are honoring the history by which that object sits. Very much like you see in museums, you have varying energy frequency values that are on everything, but yet they are in the same building. They're being looked after and cared for by those that honor history. This is how this must be treated.
Well, I have to say that, again, I can't reiterate how grateful I am that Sean and Yssah and the team, that all of them that were a part of this, that it was them. You know what I mean? That it was, folks, I have to believe that there was some sort of benevolent guiding hand to put the people who did discover it into to be the ones that did. Because, this certainly could have gone a whole different way if they, I think, were involved, and they do understand, you know, the complexities of the energies that are going around. So I just, you know, I don't know if you guys had something, want to take credit for some of that, or just say
Little
a little bit, but you know,
Meaning a
that's-
lot, but-
yeah, right. That's really what I, you know, really how I want to end this. And I believe you, the importance of this is unbelievable. You know, just understand that what you're feeling in those dynamics, so you trust yourself in what you're doing, you know, and you know, I send nothing but good energies the way to the people who are trying to, with goodness and intention, bring out this history that needs to be seen.
Mhm.
So that I just wanted to leave it like that.
Yes, 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 we couldn't agree more with this. Yes, we want to have this seen in a good light, of which it is, and a very good one. But it must be heeded with caution, must be heeded with reverence, not necessarily in the traditional way, but of a job or stewardship. You have your kind of Ghostbusters theme in there where they take up a job or a mantle of getting rid of ghosts out of people's properties. It's kind of along those lines in a movie vernacular, but in a more serious, non-comedic vernacular, it is a stewardship of the position. You would say gatekeeper who goes there, or yes, Isaac, I know the keymaster, shush. Yes, we know Ghostbusters, yes. But in this, the seriousness of this must be seen, but the seriousness of preserving the history must also equally be seen. So we hope this helps.
Yes, thank you. So Bjorn, any other questions you have?
Yeah, would you say shining a light on this information takes away where you don't let any kind of shadows, and you talk about the deceptions of certain things and the history of it, and you expose it? Would you say it takes a lot of its power and strength away because there's no longer any fear of it? It was something that was done in history, but that's where it sits, and I think that helps strengthen it. Would you say that's the
Yes,
case?
absolutely correct, Bjorn. This applies to anything monumental in history is to be honored, and what needs to be brought forward needs to be brought forward. What doesn't need to be mirrored from past experiences should remain in the past. Just like with your own shadow work, once you're past it, you put it, you know, keep it where it needs to be. Or the enemy tries to pull you back into certain experiences with looping thoughts. This is the same type of thing. You're passionate about a history because you were there. You're passionate about a history because that's who you are. But at the same moment in time, shedding light on this in a big way. This is also a reason why this was allowed, even though there was deceptiveness there with the other energies. The loose lips sink ships. In this case, it will not be sinking the sailing ship across the sea of time. It will be sinking the death barge, essentially. So, or the barge of whatever the Klingons call it in Star Trek. In this, the barge of death or forever. But anyway, it would be that analogy. Whereas you are honoring this, but at the same time, within that stewardship position, you are essentially stripping it of that negativity and holding it in the proper reverence and caution and stewardship that it actually needs to be. And this applies to any history, really, negative or positive.
I think it's a lot of what we're trying to do here at GIC and the lifting is where we're looking to expose those deceptions and really get down to the truth and understand the history and the concepts a little bit deeper, because I think, you know, I'm just starting to, I got a download from you, I believe, in quantum. It felt like my eyes were going to pop out of my head for a minute. I think it's a bit of a struggle to get through the quantum information, but I believe everybody's going to get a little bit of one here by watching this, as you called an upload. But I thank you for joining us at the consortium and welcome you to it. And I hope that we can do another show again.
Absolutely, we will do this type of show. You'll get other groups and councils of people that are interested, like the Council of Candafor. They are interested in also the preservation of this history. We've worked with them often, and they are also from a timeline. Originally, they were a timeline that was essentially the same as the Orions, but they themselves did the same thing we've done. They're not of an Earth; they're of a different planet, but they did the same thing, like the Isle of Artaeum. So this is actually quite an interesting turn of events, turning the page in history, but also honoring that page in history. So at this moment, any other questions?
No, just thank you for so much for coming.
Yes, we thank you. We are now closing Conduit. We thank you and shall return. But to return, we would have had to have left to begin with. But in all humorous side, Conduit closed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, there's another good example of the uploads and downloads like you'd get from a device. Like what Sean and Yssah did. In the show Stargate SG-1, you see this guy who finds a piece of ancient technology at a garage sale. And he starts to get downloads of Colonel O'Neill's life, and now General O'Neill. And they even show him, getting ideas for a TV show. He writes this Wormhole Extreme, or whatever the hell they call it. It was some parody. But somebody had stolen it from him in the film industry and put it out there as disclosure in the media. The same things we talk about with the games and the shows, what I'm doing right now. So it's basically a story within a story. Kind of like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where he disclosed how to capture a demon within a script. It was a story within a story. Brilliant. But with this, they did it again with SG-1. They have this guy find this at a garage sale, get all these downloads, and actually access the information that Colonel O'Neill had, because they both had the ancient gene. They both had a means to operate ancient equipment, and this thing was found at a garage sale. Nobody knew what it was. That's akin to people having this artifact, like somebody had one of the swords from the Little Bighorn at a garage sale. They were selling it for like $1, $2. Ended up being worth like 4 or 5 million, because they thought it was a myth up until that point. So whoever puts these things in garage sales, please do your research. Just please do your research, and don't just donate crap to a Goodwill because you don't want to deal with it. Look through these things. You may have a treasure in your midst. Please use your brain when it comes to this. But also, people, if you're looking at a garage sale, equally use your brain and look for things that are like that people did not think to look at. I realize people tend to not have a fence for this or means to sell this, but please at least look these things up. Because so many artifacts are going unseen, unheard of, because they're being sold at garage sales. But in this episode, because nobody's paying attention, they just want to move on from something, and, I can't handle this, but please, handle it for 2 seconds and look into it, or hand it over to somebody who can. Donate it to somebody who can. Look into it, research it. I know you're busy with work, I know you're busy with your grind, 9 to 5 crap, but just find the time, please, for history's sake. But in this episode, he ends up getting the downloads of Colonel O'Neill's life, all the way up to General. And they even showed his marriage suffering as a result. People that are waking up in some instances versus those that want to stay asleep. That often happens, unfortunately. I've seen so many relationships break up over that, and that was a beautiful example. In the end, General O'Neill then tells, per the request of that guy, they find out he has the ancient gene. He tells his wife, and then you see the end of the episode. Beautiful example of all of this. So I highly recommend that. It's a long series, folks. It's a long series. I haven't even seen all of it, believe it or not. It went on so long, and there was such gaps in there that we didn't see it. So, yeah, that's the thing. Maybe we'll retouch and find some other things that we didn't know were in there. Oh, I do want to say, I hope you actually enjoyed this episode. I don't want any butthurtedness. I don't want any clash of egos. This was just our analyzing this material and how we pick things up. So, if you've gotten this far all the way to the end, thank you. So, this is where I will leave this, but thank you again for watching this and all of our material. Please subscribe to gic.show. in the resurgence of the new Galactic Intraversal Consortium.com. Please look at our lifting archive on Rumble, and also the World of Sasquatch on Rumble, and watch on YouTube as well. Conspiracy Sector, all these wonderful things we're putting out there. So, thank you. Thank you. It is 12:21 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday, January 24th, 2025. Thank you.